king sat in his grand hall, surrounded by potential brides from far and wide. Despite their beauty and grace, none sparked the connection he longed for. The weight of his crown felt heavier than ever, and his heart grew heavier with each passing day. Yet the kingdom demanded he marry soon. He had no choice but to fulfill his duty. But something inside him stirred, a restlessness that could not be quieted. He needed more than just a wife. He needed a partner who understood him. The villagers spoke in hushed tones about the firekeeper's daughter. She was beautiful in a quiet, unassuming way, with a wisdom that exceeded her age. She wasn't like other women, and that intrigued the king. Yet, her father, the firekeeper, had warned the king of the danger of seeking her out. The flames revealed truths you may not be ready to face, the old man had warned, but the king couldn't shake the pull toward her. One evening, the king ventured into the village, disguised in simple clothes, hoping to understand the firekeeper's daughter for himself. As he sat by the fire she tended, their eyes met, and a strange silence passed between them. She didn't look at him as a king, nor did she fawn over his title. Instead, she saw him as a man, one whose heart seemed burdened by unspoken sorrow. The firekeeper's daughter, named Aruna, didn't waste time with pleasantries. She asked the king to join her in her work, tending the fire that had burned for generations. As they worked together, she spoke of the village, its struggles, and the ways in which the fire gave life to the people. The king was struck by her understanding of balance and sacrifice, qualities he had long overlooked in his royal life. As the days passed, the king's feelings for Aruna grew, but he knew the consequences of his actions. He was the king, and the kingdom expected him to marry within his station, to strengthen alliances with powerful families. The people would never accept a commoner as their queen, and yet his heart called out to Aruna. He stood at a crossroads, caught between his duty and his desires. The royal court buzzed with whispers of the king's prolonged absence and his mysterious attraction to the firekeeper's daughter. Advisors urged him to choose a bride from the noble families. "Your people demand a queen worthy of your throne," they said. The pressure mounted, but the king remained silent, lost in thought. Aruna's wisdom made him question everything he had known. Yet he knew the consequences of following his heart. One night, Aruna invited the king to witness the firekeeper's sacred ceremony. As they stood in front of the roaring fire, Aruna spoke of the trials her people faced, of their deep connection to the earth and the flames. "The fire does not judge," she said. "It burns what must be purified." The king's heart raced as the fire flickered, seemingly alive with energy. In that moment, he understood that the fire held the answers to his questions. Torn between his duties and his growing affection for Aruna, the king spent sleepless nights wrestling with his choices. His advisors urged him to marry for political gain, yet his mind kept returning to the peacefulness he found in Aruna's presence. Could he marry her and risk the kingdom's stability, or should he choose a bride that would strengthen his rule? The fire burned brighter in his heart, but the weight of his crown loomed ever larger. One evening, as the king sat by the fire, Aruna spoke words that would change everything. "You are not defined by your crown," she said softly. "You are a man first, a ruler second. True power comes from within, not from the title others have given you." Her words struck the king to his core. Could he embrace this wisdom and live a life true to himself, or would the pressures of royalty suffocate his desires? The firekeeper revealed a secret to the king. The flames of their fire could show him glimpses of the future, of the paths that lay ahead. "But the flames also show us the truth we are too afraid to face," the firekeeper warned. The king stood before the fire, his heart pounding. What would the flames reveal to him about Aruna and the future of his kingdom? As the king gazed into the fire, a vision appeared before him. Aruna standing by his side, but the kingdom was in chaos. The people, once loyal, were rebelling. The king's heart wavered. Was his love for Aruna a blessing or a curse? The vision vanished as quickly as it had come, leaving the king shaken and uncertain. The king's advisors were growing impatient. "You cannot delay this decision any longer, Your Majesty," they insisted. "The kingdom needs a queen, not a distraction." The pressure to marry a noblewoman was reaching its peak. But the king was consumed by thoughts of Aruna and the quiet wisdom she had offered him. Could he risk everything for the love of a woman who was not of his world? Noble families from neighboring lands arrived at the king's court, each hoping to secure a marriage alliance. Their beauty, wealth, and status dazzled the court, but none of them spoke to the king's heart the way Aruna did. The king's dilemma deepened. He could marry a noblewoman, secure his kingdom's future, or follow his heart and risk it all for Aruna. One evening, the firekeeper set a challenge for the king. He must prove that his love for Aruna was not just a passing fancy. "Love is a test," the firekeeper said. "You must face your fears and the obstacles that stand in your way. Only then will you be ready to claim her heart." The king felt the weight of the challenge ahead, but his heart was resolute. To prove his love, the king was sent on a dangerous journey to retrieve a sacred artifact from the neighboring mountains. The task was perilous, but it was a test of his dedication. Along the way, the king faced numerous trials, each one pushing him to question the very foundations of his life. As he climbed higher, he wondered if this journey was truly about the artifact, or if it was about his own soul. During his journey, the king encountered people from his past, former allies, old friends, and lost love. Each person had a different perspective on love and duty, but none could answer the question that plagued his heart. As he journeyed deeper into the mountains, the king found himself at a crossroads. Return to the kingdom and fulfill his duty, or follow his heart and risk everything. At the summit of the mountain, the king encountered an elder who had lived alone for many years. The elder spoke of love, sacrifice, and the challenges of ruling. "A king must choose not only with his heart, but with his wisdom," the elder said. "True love is not easy, but it is worth the fight." The king pondered these words, realizing that his decision would define not just his future, but the future of his kingdom. The king returned to the village, his heart heavy with the wisdom he had gained. He had not yet found the sacred artifact, but he had discovered something more important, the true meaning of love. But as he returned to the village, he found that things had changed. The people had begun to question his ability to rule without a queen, and his choices were now under scrutiny. The king sought out Aruna, knowing he had to confess his heart. He stood before her, vulnerable and open. "I have seen the future," he said. "I have seen the consequences of my choices. But above all, I know that my heart belongs to you." Aruna gazed at him quietly, her heart torn. She had always known the king's heart was conflicted, but could she love a man so torn between duty and desire? The king was faced with the ultimate decision, to follow his heart and marry Aruna, or to marry one of the noble women to secure his kingdom's future. The weight of his crown pressed on him, but his love for Aruna was stronger than any crown. He made his choice, but the consequences would be far-reaching. As the king made his way through the village, the murmurs of the people grew louder. Whispers of his potential marriage to Aruna reached every corner of the kingdom. Some celebrated the possibility of a queen who was humble and wise, while others feared the disruption it could cause. The court's opposition grew stronger, and the kingdom began to question whether a commoner was fit to sit by the king's side. In the royal court, the nobles began to plot against the king's growing attachment to Aruna. A king must have a queen of noble blood, they declared. The pressure on the king increased, as they demanded that he make a formal choice soon. The kingdom's stability was at stake, and with every passing day, the king's struggle with his heart grew more intense. Was he to follow his duty, or would he risk everything for love? The king spent days alone in his chambers, weighed down by the demands of both his heart and his kingdom. He wrote letters to Aruna, but he never sent them. His thoughts swirled in chaos. His love for her was undeniable, but the responsibility of his throne made him hesitate. In his solitude, he finally asked himself, would love be enough to bear the weight of the crown? The king had not seen Aruna in days. Her silence haunted him, and he began to fear that she might have already made her choice, that she would leave him to fulfill her own destiny. His heart ached with the possibility of losing her. Desperate, he sought the firekeeper's daughter in the quiet moments of the night, only to find her tending the fire alone, as if she were waiting for him to make his move. One night, in the flickering light of the sacred fire, the king and Aruna found themselves alone. Words failed them both as they stood together, the air thick with unspoken emotions. Finally, the king reached out and kissed her, softly, as if testing the waters of their love. The kiss was full of longing, yet full of sorrow. They both knew it was a kiss that could change everything. The firekeeper, sensing the shift in the air, pulled the king aside. "The fire does not lie," he warned. "It burns brighter when the heart is torn. Be cautious, for love can blind a king to his duties." The king struggled with his emotions, torn between the man he wanted to be and the man he was expected to be. Could he truly love Aruna without losing everything he had worked for? With the court growing more impatient and the villagers beginning to voice their doubts, the king felt the full weight of his crown. He walked through the palace halls, each step echoing in his mind, reminding him of the throne he was bound to. He wondered if he could balance love with his responsibilities, or if one would inevitably destroy the other. One fateful morning, Aruna was gone. The king searched for her desperately, but it was as though she had vanished into the earth itself. Her absence left a hollow emptiness in his heart. He realized too late that he had waited too long to make a decision. Without her, the world felt colder, and the fire that had once burned brightly between them seemed to die. The king stood by the fire once more, reflecting on the choices he had made. Regret gnawed at him, but he understood, perhaps too late, that love could not be forced or rushed. Aruna had shown him a path to wisdom, and now it was up to him to find his way back. With a heavy heart, the king realized he could never be the ruler his people needed unless he first understood himself. He had to find Aruna and prove to her that his heart was true. The king, determined and resolute, set out once more. This time he would not allow fear or duty to control him. He ventured into the mountains where Aruna had once led him, following the quiet whispers of the wind. In the silence of the forest, he finally found her, standing by the river, her eyes serene yet distant. She turned to face him, and the king with all his heart asked, "Will you share my heart, not just as a king, but as a man?" As the king stood before Aruna, the weight of his crown felt like a distant memory. His heart beat loudly in his chest, the silence between them thick with anticipation. Aruna gazed at him, her eyes soft yet filled with a quiet strength. The king knew this was his moment, the culmination of everything he had struggled with, the crossroads where duty and love finally met. I chose duty for so long, the king said, his voice filled with vulnerability. But now I see that true power comes from love, from being true to who I am. I have chosen you, Aruna, not as my queen, but as the woman who holds my heart. Will you walk with me, not in the shadows of the throne, but by my side, as we create a new path together? Aruna's eyes softened as she stepped forward, placing a hand on his chest, feeling the rhythm of his heart. I knew you were a king long before you wore the crown, she whispered, and I have always loved the man beneath it. In that moment, the king made his choice, not just as a ruler, but as a man. Together they walked into the future, their love the foundation of a new reign. The kingdom would be led by a king who knew that true power lies not in the crown, but in the love and wisdom of the heart. Thank you all for watching this journey of the king's heart. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to stay tuned for more captivating tales. Your support means the world to us. Until next time, stay true to yourself and remember, love is always the most powerful force.